Welcome to The Sweat. I'm Jessie Coffield alongside Emerson Lotzia.
Super stoked. We just found out Shark Week starts on Sunday.
Yeah, it does. Safest time to be in the water because all the sharks are busy being on TV. So definitely.
I haven't thought of it like that.
Go swimming in Chatham.
Yeah, no, don't do it.
Yeah, splash around
swim
and
with
stuff.
the seals.
Anyway, this show's called The Sweat. 60 minutes of DFS and betting advice coming your way.
Cool.
It's all very exciting. Going to touch on a lot of things. Jason deGrom. Going to join the program.
Jacob?
Oh, yeah. Did I just call him Jason?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, Jason deGrom also joining the program. Just kidding, Jacob deGrom joining the program.
Brother. Okay, great start to the show. We got a lot of football previews too. We're going to wrap up the NFC
let's
West.
Start with
baseball because there is a 15-game slate. I do know these guys' names. Greg Ehrenberg, Steve Buchanan of DK Live. We're going to play some MLB pickoff here, guys. So which side of these bets would you fall on? Let's start with Steve's team. The Red Sox, Chris Sales, over-under, 8.5 strikeouts against the Rays tonight. Steven, you taking the over or the under here? Finally got his first win at home last week.
Yeah, finally, amazing. I mean, what a feat for Chris Sale to get a win at home here. I mean, it's tough. We're heading into August, and I'm sitting here questioning if Chris Sale is going to actually get over 8.5 strikeouts here. He's only hit that total in 2 of his last 5 starts. He's allowed 5 runs in 3 of his last 5 starts. I mean, this kind of isn't the Chris Sale that we're used to seeing. But now he's facing a Rays team that has the 6th highest K percentage in the league at 24.6%. Offensively, they're not a good team against lefties, but I'm going to take the over on this spot, but I don't feel great about it. I mean, we realistically have to think about if Chris Sale's going to make it through this start. I mean, he's been hit hard by the Blue Jays recently, the White Sox. Like, those are teams that you should be beating up on, not them beating you up. So it's a tough spot, but if you're just going to go with talent-wise and the strikeout ability, then yeah, the over makes sense in this spot.
Okay, and Gregory, let's see. He's faced the Rays once already this year, had 8 Ks, so very close to this mark.
So I'm going to agree with Steve and hesitantly take the over. He's been really inconsistent this year. Like, he had a really rough start to the season. Then he started pitching well for a little bit. Then he started struggling again. He had a recent bad stretch. But one thing that's maybe a little bit of a silver lining when we look at his inconsistencies, he was really good his last outing. 6 shutout innings, 12 strikeouts. So maybe that's a sign that he's starting to get kind of back into a good groove. If we look at the Rays, tough offense, but they strike out a lot against left-handed pitching, 24.2% K rate. The one thing that Sale has done, even when he hasn't pitched well, he has had a lot of big strikeout games. So I think that we could see him with another big strikeout number, but I don't feel all that confident in it.
Hey, Greg, the Indians have scored 6 or more runs in 6 of their last 8. You can get them at plus 105 odds for them to go over 5.5 runs tonight in Toronto or minus 121 to go under. So do you like the over the under here?
Yeah, I like the over. I think the Indians are in a really good spot. I think they're really good stacks tonight. Aaron Sanchez has just pretty much been terrible all year. 6.26 ERA, really high hard contact rate. He's giving up a whole bunch of home runs. And the real key to the Indians' offense right now is that Jose Ramirez was an MVP candidate last year. And part of the reason their offense just struggled to start the year was Jose Ramirez was awful. He was a guy who was like around a 50 WRC plus. He was a below replacement level player. Over the last month or so, he's been over 140 WRC plus. He's starting to look like an all-star again. And as a result, the Indians are climbing up the standings. They're starting to play well. And I think the offense is in a pretty good spot going forward, and in particular tonight. Steve,
I know from reading your article on the playbook that you like that Indian stack.
Wow. I know Emerson reads the article.
Thank you.
You to read it.
I do, yeah.
This is huge.
Yeah.
You and I might need to have a moment when I see you next time.
Oh, we will.
Whoa, slow it down, guys. Slow it down.
Don't be jealous.
Well, all right. So, I mean, we had a tough question here with Chris Sale and the strikeouts. Now we have an absolute layup. I mean, yes, they will absolutely hit the over here. In his last 10 starts, Aaron Sanchez has hit the over, allowed the over himself in 4 of his last 10 starts. Allowed at least 4 runs or more in 8 of his last 10 starts. It's just been a nightmare when he takes the mound. The only concern I would have here is that if the Indians somehow aren't able to get to Sanchez, because the Blue Jays bullpen has actually been pretty damn good since we came back from the All-Star break. They've only allowed 15 earned runs since that All-Star break, which is actually one of the lowest in the league, and they have 51 strikeouts to go with it, which is one of the highest. But I think the probability of the Indians not getting to Sanchez is pretty low. I think they're going to absolutely wreck him in this spot here, so I have absolutely no problem taking the over on this spot.
All right, guys, let's go to the top two teams in the AL West. Oakland is a plus 145 underdog against Houston this evening. So they were smoked 11-1 yesterday by the Astros, in case you missed it. But they do send Mike Fiers to the mound tonight. He's been rolling, 1.79 ERA in his last 7 starts. You like them as underdogs tonight, or are you going to ride with the Stros, Steve?
Yeah, I'm absolutely going with the Astros here. I mean, even Jason Vargas was able to pitch well for a period of time. It can happen. Mike Fiers is going to get lit up at some point. This is probably the night where it happens here, especially when you look at Wade Miley, what he's done at home. He's been actually almost untouchable when he's pitching at home. A 370 xFIP, 258 WOBA, only 10 runs allowed when he's pitched at home this season. That's through a span of 43 1/3 innings. At the same time, the Oakland Athletics have done their best offense against left-handed pitching, but they've already faced Miley once before this season, only got 2 runs off of. I'm sorry, they faced him twice already this season and had 2 runs off of him. So they obviously aren't doing well against Miley here. I'm going to side with the Astros here. Like I said, Mike Fiers, I think, is pitching a little bit over his head here, and this is a really, really good Houston offense he has to face tonight. So not liking the Athletics here.
Steve, that's a good point. The A's, an 824 team OPS against left-handed pitching. That's 5th in the majors. They know what they're doing against southpaw assassins. But Gregory, I'm also looking at this, like Houston up 8-1 in the head-to-head series. So, I mean, it sounds like the Stros are a no-brainer.
So here's the issue with Mike Fiers. He has pitched well recently, but I think it's mostly luck-driven. For the season, he has a 243 BABIP. That's almost certainly going to come up, especially because he has a career-high hard contact rate. He's giving up almost 40% of balls in play are hard contact. So he has a 3.64 ERA, but 4.59 FIP, 5.35 xFIP. If there's ever a time that he's going to start to regress, it's going to come against this Astros offense, which has just been ridiculously good lately, and it's because they're getting healthy. They have George Springer back, Jose Altuve, Yordan Alvarez up from AAA. So it's just a loaded offense, and I think this is where Fiers starts to stink it up, and he's probably not going to be good for the rest of the season.
All right, a couple odds boost specials on the DK Sportsbook tonight. You can get Darvish and Bumgarner to both record 8+ strikeouts. DK odds boost from +600 to +670.
Ooh.
Or Philadelphia, New York, and Seattle all to win, boosted from +450 to +505. Greg, which one of these odds boost specials do you like better?
Well, it's kind of a hard question because I don't really like either of them all that much.
Cool. Well, you have to choose one.
I did do a little bit of math here.
Nice, dude. I can't do math.
So if we go to 538 and we look at the odds of each of these teams individually to win in the parlay, it is a 53% chance for New York to win, 62% for Philly, 50% for Seattle. We put all those together, and that means it's about a 16% chance of all 3 of them occurring. For this to be a plus EV bet, it needs to occur 16.5% of the time or greater. So it's slightly negative EV. However, I still think that's better odds than the other number because Bumgarner doesn't strike a lot of guys out anymore, and Yu Darvish is way too inconsistent for me to ever trust him. So slightly negative EV on the parlay, but better than the other one, which I just think is really bad odds.
Wow. Yo, Steve, I'm not very good with math, so maybe you could break this down for me without the math.
Layman's terms.
What the hell do I say? Like, what do I follow up with that? Like, we got a math whiz.
I did the astrophysics of it, and I figured out.
It's science.
I multiplied 3 numbers together.
It's science.
Yeah, you did, dude. Did you use a calculator?
I mean, this guy's about to, initiate a rocket launch with NASA. BS he just threw at me. I mean, here's how I broke it down. Bumgarner's only struck out 8 or more guys 5 times this season. Darvish has only done it 6 times. And Darvish has to face a Giants team that doesn't strike out much at all. So we'll X out that one there. So there's the logic in that one. I'd rather the 3-team parlay, but I don't love that one either. This would be the only time in my life that I'd actually put my hard-earned money on a Tommy Milone start for the Mariners. So that's in itself says something there. So I'll take the 3-team parlay, but at the end, both of these bets are, not the best you could do on a particular night.
Greg, I want you to know I watched the movie First Man last night about Neil Armstrong walking on the moon, and so I totally actually followed what you were saying earlier. So I get it. Is
multiplication really that difficult for you guys?
Yeah, it is.
Well, not after I watched the movie, no. But you two hang out, please, because Steve is going to put up his bukes to wrap up the show. But coming up next, we've got our NFL team previews moving along. We're talking with the Cardinals about the Cardinals with Steve. Yeah. With Steve, with Jeff, with Reed.
Tyler Sullivan here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. The Saints are showing Michael Thomas the money, but it may not be as much cash as the star receiver had hoped. According to Yahoo Sports' Charles Robinson, New Orleans has offered Thomas a contract extension that would average between $18 and $19 million annually. And while that's certainly a large amount of dough, Thomas, who is entering the final year of his deal, is said to be looking to become the first $20 million a year receiver in the NFL. Odell Beckham Jr. is currently the highest paid receiver on an average salary standpoint at $18 million a season. During his first 3 years in the league, Thomas quickly established himself as one of the game's elite pass catchers. He hauled in 125 balls last year for just over 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns. But what's interesting about these negotiations between Thomas and the Saints is the impact it could have across the league. Julio Jones and the Falcons are currently working on an extension, while Amari Cooper is reportedly waiting to see how the market shakes out before he and the Cowboys discuss a new deal. ESPN reported back in June that the hope was for Thomas and the Saints to come to terms on a contract before the start of camp. That officially opens for New Orleans on Friday, so the clock is ticking on getting this potential record-setting deal done.
Alrighty, welcome back to The Sweat, where we now turn our attention to football. Training camps open this week. Yes, I was going to say that.
I wanted to help you out, man.
Stop, man.
Yeah.
Just let me talk.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to preview the Cardinals with Steve Buchanan, Jeff Ulrich, and Reed T. Fowler. Reed and I both got haircuts today. That's why we look more handsome than anyone else on the show.
That's incorrect. Anyway, guys, you know how this works. We have a panel that is very mysterious. They're shrouded in mystery.
Made up of DraftKings writers and analysts.
But none of our writers and analysts are on the panel.
To be continued.
Anyway, they're predicting that the MVP of the Cardinals is going to be Kyler Murray, #1 overall draft pick. Steve, do you think this is going to be the case?
Wow. Went out on a limb on that. I mean, look, he honestly, like, we all know he has the potential to put up legitimate QB1 production. I mean, this offense is specifically being drawn up to fit his style of play. And the Cardinals last season were the second slowest team in pace of play last season. Like, they legitimately have a chance to be one of the most aggressive, fast-paced team in the league when all is said and done here. I mean, let's not forget this is somebody who in Oklahoma had 42 touchdowns through the air, 12 touchdowns on the ground. I mean, he's just got some unbelievable talent. His range, his motion, everything just checks off all the boxes here to succeed in this offense. So, yes, if this offense is going to do well and they're going to put up points, it's going to be because of this guy right here.
Jeff, I know that
you get very excited.
You're obsessed with Kyler Murray.
Look, to quote Walter White, as far as Kyler Murray being the fantasy MVP, you're goddamn right. I'm not just saying he's going to be the MVP of the Cardinals, by the way. He's going to be the fantasy MVP of the season. Like, I'm not even going down. I'm so sure that this is going to be a thing. Everyone is unsure of this for some reason, and it's because they remember the Cardinals from last year being a slow-paced team under Steve Wilkes. That team does not exist anymore. Cliff Kingsbury is here to chuck the ball around, and he drafted Kyler Murray first overall for a reason. He drafted Hakeem Butler. He drafted Andy Isabella for a reason, because he wants to chuck the ball around, and that's the only chance the Cardinals have. They're missing Patrick Peterson. This is a team that's going to be involved in shootouts all year long. Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield in the pocket, better than Russell Wilson outside the pocket. This guy is going to rack up so many yards on the ground and passing in these garbage time situations. I think he's got a very real chance of being the #1 fantasy quarterback this year.
Bold statements here, Reed. No, he's talking across the board.
Okay. Are we thinking like a Patrick Mahomes type season like we saw last year?
Absolutely. #1 fantasy quarterback. I think he's got a shot. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but
Reed looks like he's going to throw up.
No, he doesn't.
What changes? He always looks like he's going to throw.
Oh, I mean, Jeff, that's a good sentiment. He brought in some current, topics with, Breaking Bad. I was not that current, but I appreciate that. And I'd like to know where Jeff is drafting Kyler Murray. If he thinks he's MVP of the entire season, where are you drafting him? 3rd round?
I mean, I don't need to draft him 3rd round, Reed, because no one's taking him that high. So
it doesn't matter, though. It doesn't matter who. I mean, you're drafting him first QB overall, and I get the upside.
Why would I draft him higher than I have to? That makes no sense.
Well, it's because you're claiming he's Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes blazed the entire season. I mean, if we all had a chance to do it over again, we'd draft him in the 3rd round. He's going in the 2nd or 3rd round of this year's draft, Patrick Mahomes is. And I get the upside. Jeff's right. Bukes is right. This guy has extreme upside, but it's Kyler Murray. We don't know yet. He's a small, and just the devil's advocate side, because I do agree with these guys. He is going to be the MVP. Wow. When you look at just the upside of what this guy can offer in Cliff Kingsbury, this team ran the 4th most plays, right, in college. Kingsbury did at Texas Tech, and you just look at Kyler Murray. Oklahoma had the best offense, 7.2 average carries. The guy, per game, he had over 1,000 yards rushing. All the stats are there, but it's Cliff Kingsbury, it's Kyler Murray. It's a ton of rookie wide receivers. They're in a tough division. I get all of that. They're going to be in shootouts. They're going to do well, but he's still a rookie quarterback. If you just look over the last decade, rookie quarterbacks finishing fantasy football in the top 14, it only happened a handful of times. In the top 10, it's only happened 3 times that a rookie quarterback has finished inside the top 10. I'm not saying that it's feasible that he doesn't finish within the top 10, but he's definitely not winning QB1 honors this season. It's Patrick Mahomes.
Reed, LVP, Larry Fitzgerald, thoughts?
No, it's going to be Kyler. No, it's not going to be Kyler Murray. LVP, I don't know about Larry Fitzgerald. Look, he's getting really old. You clearly know that this team is getting way younger. Look how they drafted. Jeff mentioned some guys that they went to in terms of the receiving core. They had one of the worst. And if you just look at team offense, they were the dead last in terms of plays run, in terms of offense, what have you. When you look at Larry Fitzgerald, he had Josh Rosen and Sam Bradford as quarterback. And he finished as a top wide receiver, top 30 wide receiver yet again. I'm not saying he is a wide receiver 2 or 1, or that's going to be the case, but what's going to be a safety blanket for Kyler Murray? If we look at just what he's able to do and the rookie receivers that he has on the outsides in Akeem Butler, in Christian Kirk, these guys do present a lot of upside, but that safety blanket is Larry Fitzgerald. So I don't think that's the case. I think Andy Isabella is someone that I think a lot of people are high on because of his speed and where he can play. He's someone that's going in drafts later in the round that I wouldn't necessarily be extremely high on. Ricky Seals-Jones is not, getting drafted, so I don't think he has any sort of value. But it's not going to be Larry Fitzgerald, in my opinion, because he's not being drafted extremely high, and I think he still could easily finish as a top 30 wide receiver.
Yeah, Steve, Reed brings up a good point. There's more competition than ever for targets in Arizona, but those top options besides Fitz, they're inexperienced at the NFL level. So, are we thinking Larry Fitzgerald, people are going to be overvaluing this guy?
Reed said he might have a chance to finish in the top 30. Was he talking about top 30 in his age group? He was a little vague with how he laid that out. But look, he's winding down his career here with the Cardinals. He's no longer going to be the focal point of this offense. I can't imagine he's going to be able to keep up. Granted, he dominated in targets last season with 112, but he didn't do much with them. He had 69 receptions, 734 yards on those receptions. Look, he's still going to get in his work. He's still going to get, his looks and whatnot. But, Christian Kirk, who we're going to talk about here in a second here, that's going to be the guy in this offense here. We expect David Johnson to be more involved. If he can be any less involved than he was last year. There's a lot of guys in this offense. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And, I think Fitzgerald, as the season progresses, is just going to fade out more and more.
Jeff, how overvalued will the future Hall of Famer be?
This is a tough call because I'm very sure about what's going to happen at the quarterback position and the running back position for the Cardinals. But wide receiver, for fantasy purposes, it's a bit of a we don't really know how this is going to shake out. Just because we haven't really seen this offense in full effect. Is Larry Fitzgerald going to still just rack up receptions underneath and maybe be a red zone target, or is it just going to be bubble screens to these new guys over and over, and is Fitzgerald just going to be limited to like a red zone role? I would side probably with the latter, that he's going to get phased out a little bit. But look, it is Larry Fitzgerald, so this could break either way. If you got to pick an LVP, it's probably him for me as well, just because outside of David Johnson and Kyler Murray, who else is really getting drafted that high for the Cardinals? Maybe Christian Kirk, but I'm pretty high on Christian Kirk. So I think this could shake out either way for Larry Fitzgerald. I'm certainly not writing him off, but yeah, he would probably be my choice to put here.
Well, Jeff, speaking of Christian Kirk, the panel is predicting that he's going to be the breakout player of the year. We know he missed the final 4 games of the season with a broken foot, but he's back to full strength, and he played for a year with Kyler Murray at Texas A&M, so they could have some chemistry together. Obviously, you're high on him, so do you think he's going to be the breakout player of the year?
Yeah, he's got every chance to be. Look, we saw him, I think a lot of people were high on him last year, and you saw him working in the Cardinals offense. And when they did get him the ball, you saw how crisp a route runner he was, how good he was after the catch. He's just a good receiver. You can't really say that about every young player that comes out of college, but Christian Kirk, I absolutely think you can. He can do a lot of different things, work the bubble screens, work over the middle, and just like I said, just run good routes. I do think Andy Isabella has every chance to be the actual breakout star here, because I think when you look at them, he profiles a little bit just as a bit more of a number one receiver. But Christian Kirk, coming in second year, like you said, he's got to work with Patrick Mahomes. He's going to be my choice here. Really no reason to doubt him this year, in my opinion.
Steve, what do you think about Christian Kirk as the breakout player of the year?
Yeah, I think this is going to be your wide receiver one as the season progresses here. I mean, look, even before he broke his foot, I mean, in the last 5 games before that injury occurred, he was averaging 6.2 targets per game, 44 yards per game before the injury. Now he's in such a different offense, and one that's probably going to suit him a lot better than whatever the hell you want to call it he was in last season. I just think this is going to be the breakout year for Kirk. There's not a lot of options here otherwise, but yeah, I think Kirk's going to be the guy, and I think a lot of people are going to be looking towards him in their draft, and definitely as the season goes along.
Reed, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, if we just look at the numbers and what he was, again, able to do with bad quarterback play, he broke out, like Steve was mentioning, before his injury, but just to not be repetitive. I also think Hakeem Butler, Andy Isabella is more of the college-style receiver, so I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards that. But Hakeem Butler is the cheapest out of the receivers, and I think all three, or between the two, not counting Kirk, of the rookie receivers, I think he has a solid chance because of the style of play, right? He can play anywhere. We saw his big body, skinny but big body receiver that has played out of the slot. And I don't think it's going to be Isabella over and over again out of the slot if something were to happen to Fitzgerald. I think when you look at this guy, these big body receivers out of the slot, that's really where the offense is going in the NFL. And if we can get one of these guys at a really cheap price, again, Christian Kirk's rising up draft boards right now because of what the guys have said. I think Hakeem Butler presents some upside because of the style of offense that they play.
We will wrap up the NFC West when we preview the 49ers season, and I believe the panel is drinking the Jeff Ulrich Kool-Aid. I will explain what I mean coming up, but first, the Tour Junkies are talking about Brooks Koepka, who likely is not practicing for this week's tournament because it's not a major.
And we're going to go with the top guy, and that is Brooks Koepka at 11-6. You all year long, you have been fading the top guy in DraftKings, and you're going to take Brooks Koepka this week. Not in a major, not in a, it is a WGC event, but I can't see it. I mean, I just don't see it, especially in a week where you gotta differentiate yourself, like we've said. Easy for me to say, and I don't know. Everybody's probably going to love some Brooks Koepka this week, but
no. Nay, no one. That's one of the biggest reasons why I say you take him, to differentiate yourself. Nobody's going to play him in a no-cut event at a WGC non-major at 11-6 in a stacked field where you can get Justin Rose at 9,500, Hendrik Stenson at 9,100. Nobody's going to play Brooks. But that's one reason why I think you play him at 11-6. I do think he's going to be pretty low owned in terms of tournament plays. Not to mention, I have a couple of 6K guys and low 7K guys that I really, really like here that I think you can easily fit in a lineup. And you got to be different. We talked about ownership leverage. You got to be different. I think that's going to make a big difference here. Brooks played really well. He said it himself, and I agree. Arguably, no one hit the ball better than he did at the Open Championship. Seriously, nobody hit it better. The dude could not make a putt to save his girlfriend's life. Couldn't make a putt at all. But when you look at it, he has actually played TPC Southwind a good bit. He's played 20 rounds at TPC Southwind, and he is 7th in strokes gained total in those 20 rounds he's played. This is a tee to green golf course, and nobody is doing it better right now than Brooks Koepka tee to green, and you get the ownership leverage. You're right. I do rarely play the top price guy on DraftKings, but I think in a 64-man field no-cut event, this is one of those weeks where you do it if it makes sense.
Alrighty, our PGA panel is back. TK Live's Jeff Ulrich and Reed Fowler, and we're here to talk about the St. Jude Invitational. And earlier, Reed and I had a very calm and normal conversation about this invitational and how it's changed.
Yeah, well, it's a WGC event,
It was a very normal conversation.
Yeah, it used to be like a mediocre stop on tour.
But it's confusing about just like Dustin Johnson winning and Justin Thomas,
Okay.
So,
all right, so we'll get to that in a second. But
I'm still confused, Reed.
And she has just confused me now, and I thought I knew what I was talking about before. PGA Price Check, though, so let's see where you guys sit on the salaries for this tournament. Dustin Johnson, the highest price behind Koepka, 11-4. You going to pay up for him, Reed?
I'm not. And I'm with David in terms of paying up for Brooks and playing him. And I don't do this very often. It's sort of revisionist history. And I agree with Jeff. From what he said, he kind of swayed me a little bit more so yesterday on playing Brooks. If you talk about what he cares about, if he only cares about the 4 majors, then you got a lot of time between now and then in the Masters to only care about 1 major. So I think he does care. There's a lot at stake here. And again, this is a huge field. It's a no-cut event, right? There's 64 players. There's value everywhere because it's the top 64 guys, minus Shane Lowry, that are playing here. So when you get Brooks at 11-6, he's a guy I like to play. Just look at Dustin Johnson. He only got birdie on 33 or a third of the par 5s at the Open last week, and he just wasn't hitting it well. He bogeyed, I think, 2 of those par 5s. And it was out of character. It just doesn't come into good form. A lot of people are going to go to him because he's won twice at this course. And so I'd rather go with Brooks at the very top there.
Jeff, last winner on the host course here at TPC Southwind, his scoring average in 20 rounds, 67.75. That's under 68.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a different event and venue from what we saw last week. Obviously, it's going to be perfect weather. It's like manicured Bermuda greens, just a typical PGA Tour stop. So you don't want to just write off Dustin Johnson here because he's typically dominated this course over his career, especially 2 wins at TPC Southwind, a bunch of other good results. So you don't want to just say you just write him off and you should play all the guys underneath him. But if we're talking PGA Price Check, I do think he should be less than this. I would rank guys like Rory McIlroy and Justin Thomas ahead of him this week because you look at their ball striking stats, especially Justin Thomas. He's been way better tee to green the last month or so than Dustin Johnson. So, if you're just going by course history, like I said, it definitely gives Dustin a boost. Every chance he's going to bounce back here. He's got a great record in WGCs, but I do think he's too expensive. And like I said yesterday, and Reed just said, I would lean Koepka over Dustin Johnson at these prices.
Yeah, Justin Thomas, second on the tour in strokes gained tee to green. Now he's 10,700, listed as the defending champion because this used to be the WGC Bridgestone, which he won at Firestone Country Club last year.
That's not.
It's like the meme where the woman's like, and there's all the numbers around her head, like. So 10-7, price check that for me, Jeff.
Yeah, like you said, it's just a different course. So he's never played TPC Southwind before. It's really the only thing bad you could say against him. But at the same time, Justin Thomas has putted well in Bermuda greens. He's won the Honda Classic, which has definitely a lot of similarities as far as venue-wise to what we're seeing this week. It's a tougher par 70 with longer par 4s, Bermuda greens. So there's no reason why Justin Thomas shouldn't come in here and feel right at home. And it really just comes down to recent form. Dude's been a ball-striking machine since he came back from that wrist injury. It's just been a matter of, can he actually putt well enough to get himself in contention? So far, it's been a no, but it has been improving lately, his last couple starts especially. I take the discount here with Justin Thomas over Dustin Johnson all day this week. It's probably going to be popular. It's the one thing to think about for big field GPPs this week, especially in DraftKings. But other than that, I'm not going to find much fault here.
Reed, he's 10-7. What do you think?
Yeah, no, you explained that very nicely, Jesse.
Easy.
It's interesting. Jeff hit on all the exact points with Justin Thomas. The ball striking is fantastic. He switched his putter, and I think I mentioned this earlier, that he switched his putter from like the mallet to a blade. Now he's back to the putter that has treated him well over the past couple of years. But he's kind of had this Hideki-like last half of this season where he's one of these guys, and we saw him actually at the Bridgestone last year where he missed a cut at the Open, and then he came in at like $8,800. He was 30-1 or plus 3,000, and he won that tournament. And you kind of see this now. If it wasn't necessarily for this WGC event, we would see him probably a little bit lower price than this. And so now with this WGC and all of these guys coming over, I think he's priced correctly. I would go a little bit more towards Rory. Again, I'm paying up. I'm saving somewhere else, just because to what Jeff has mentioned that last point, which is this is going to be a tournament. It's a no-cut event. You really have to play the ownership as opposed to the price, divorce the price from the player, and really look at ownerships. And I think with Rory, even though he's a public favorite, even though the sentiment is there, I think people are going to look at what he did in that opening round and say, like, I'd rather pay down and pay for a guy like JT Hideki. There's a ton of value in this major type pricing. So I'd rather, again, pay up and pass on JT. Not because the form is not there, just because I'm playing ownership.
Reed, Matt Kuchar, I feel like, just been like sneaky good this year. Second in the FedEx Cup standings. It seems like $9,000 is some pretty good value for him.
Yeah, and this what confused me a little bit, because he is, and again, outside of the Brooks Koepkas and the guys that are playing, I mean, he's having an extremely solid season. We see the wins, the top fives. He makes a lot of cuts, and again, this is a no-cut event, and so a guy like Kuchar, for me, I'm going to pass over on him just because, and this isn't because of recent form or anything of that nature. If you just look at guys in chalk that I'd rather play, a guy like Bryson, who came over here early from the Open Championship, who wants to obviously play well and has played well in this summer before and last season, he's someone that I'd rather pay in terms of ownership and price as opposed to Matt Kuchar. Matt Kuchar has played a ton of WGC events, so he has experience, so to speak, in this style of tournament. So if you want to play that angle, I get it. But that chalk is not something I want to pay for. I'd rather go to Bryson.
Jeff, a lackluster Open T41, hasn't played on TPC Southwind since 2007. So is $9,000 kind of the right price point for him?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Kuchar has a chance to kind of get overlooked this week. That doesn't happen very often, but I feel like everyone is probably going to get in on Henrik Stenson, who's just been a ball striking machine and has probably played better than Matt Kuchar over the last month. And I personally, I like that move. But if you're talking about ownership percentages, I mean, again, we're coming back to a PGA course where a guy like Matt Kuchar just makes all his money. And I know he hasn't played TPC Southwind much, but it really does kind of set up as a Matt Kuchar event where you're arrow straight in the fairways, and then you're really good with your approaches, and the greens are well manicured and easy to take care of, and your short game is easier to manage as well. So it does set up as a Kuchar style course. I think the price is right, but I don't know. I mean, Henrik Stenson playing well behind him. Reed mentioned a couple guys, especially Bryson, maybe with, I think, a little bit better upside. And I think there are players with better upside, even in the low 8K range, Finau, Day, Casey. So I don't really feel the need to go out and grab Matt Kuchar at this price. He might be actually a little bit depressed in ownership this week, which is something to think about, but not really a guy I'm necessarily huge on this week.
All right, good stuff, golf gurus.
Gorgeous golf gurus.
My Jacob deGrom interview coming up, but right now, here's the Pat Mayo experience on Bubba Watson.
Some other dudes. The one guy I want to mention in the low sevens.
I got one. I got one for you.
Uh-oh, it's your boy, so I like Bubba.
I like Bubba too.
Oh, dear God. Well, is this a Bubba court? I mean, you're the Bubba whisperer. I go to you for that.
So I guess the big thing with Bubba is I have no real track record of him at this course is the issue. He played in the WGC St. Jude, which is now that's the problem. They changed these WGC names, that he was 31st at Bridgestone last year. But if you look at the St. Jude Classic, no results. But this seems to be like a prototypical Bubba type of course. It's not POA, which is difficult because that's generally where he gets a lot of his wins. But he does have wins on Bermuda as well, whether it be at the match play, whether it be at TPC Louisiana, which is also a Bermuda Pete Dye course. Plays really well at Pete Dye courses. But when we go back and look at his track record, obviously I mentioned that Travelers is a place that you can correlate with this, and he can just take wedge. He can basically go driver wedge on every single hole. And it's not like he's losing strokes off the tee. He's second in this field in strokes gained off the tee over the past 36 rounds. 7 of the past 8 winners of this event at this course. Now, not necessarily this event, but the St. Jude Classic. Finished top 15 in the field in strokes gained off the tee for that particular week. You don't need to be the best, but you need to be pretty good at it. And we know Bubba's irons are just all over the place. One week they can be great. The other week they can just be piss poor. The putter worries me with him. The lack of experience worries me with him. But if I'm also going to throw Valspar into this mix, he finished top 5 at Valspar earlier this year too. It's a shorter course, it's a bit difficult, and you don't think that it would necessarily be a Bubba track, but I can see it in full disclosure. I bet him at 100-1 as well.
Yeah, I mean, triple digits for him at 7,100. These are things that I'm willing to go to. There's always scary things with Bubba. I'll say I actually was pretty impressed he made the cut last week. For me, that's improvement for him over there. I know the recent form isn't great, but this is a guy that we have seen get crazy hot, and you summed it up. Off the tee game is unbelievable. He should be able to be creative around here, and he again, 72 holes, he can outscore his placement. There's nothing wrong with that. And he has a real buffer with this price point where you're not asking that much for him to return value.
And it's funny, like skill set wise, when you look at him versus the rest of the players in this range, like the only players that he really correlates with are Wolf and JB Holmes. The other guys are like Noren, Kisner, Pepperell, Cam Smith, Furyk, Beauregard, Billy Horschel, Brant Snedeker, Ian Poulter, like Danny Willett. Like you have bombers, then you have sort of like the overall grinder type players that can get really hot with iron some week, but rely on their putter a lot. That I think that very few people will go to Bubba. Maybe people will now be like, Pat's always wrong, but I'll believe him on Bubba. Probably not a great idea. But I just like the way that his skill's set up for this course. If we talked about that it's sneaky long to begin with, that can only play in the favor of Bubba Watson.
It's a situation too where, that I'm willing to take the risk with a guy like him because I think the reward pays off. Some of these other guys, if you told me I'm trying to hit a top 20 in the betting market, I'm not sure I'd look to someone like Bubba per se. I think it's more of a boom bust situation. Like you said, you bet an outright on him. And I think this is someone that I'm looking to really potentially make a huge move in terms of value in my lineups. Other lineups where I take a big risk somewhere else, I'm more apt to take someone like Kisner, even like Leishman or one of the grinder types that it's not as explosive one way or the other.
Welcome back to The Sweat, where we have a very special guest joining us, Mets ace Jacob deGrom. Thanks for joining us, Jacob.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so the 2018 season was a pretty good one for you. You led the league in ERA and won your first Cy Young. Not too shabby. So did that season feel differently than any others? Like, did you feel more locked in?
Yeah, I would say so. Throughout my career, everybody's told me there's going to be 10 starts where you feel really good, 10 starts where you feel okay, and 10 starts where you don't feel that great. And it's what you do in those 10 where you don't feel that great. And last year, it felt like every time I took the ball, I felt really good. So felt really locked in and really felt like I was able to throw any pitch, any count, anytime I wanted to.
Well, just before the season started, you agreed to a 5-year contract extension with the Mets. What does it mean for you to have that vote of confidence from the club and like that comfort of knowing your immediate future?
Yeah, it means a lot. You want to know that a team wants you to be a part of it and part of their future. And for the Mets to extend me definitely shows me that they wanted me to be a part of the future here and that there's a plan to win here. So that was big for me. I've enjoyed my time here. I always said that before, and I wanted to be a Met for life. And, they kind of granted that wish.
Well, it's been an up and down season for the Mets this year, but with how competitive the NL is, you're still just 7 games out of a wild card spot. So with that on the line, how focused is this team right now?
Yeah, everybody's focused. Obviously the first half didn't go how we had planned, but there's still a lot of baseball left. And looking at it only being 7 games back, a lot can change. And we got a lot of important games coming up. We're playing most of those teams who are ahead of us, so we can gain some ground. So we're looking forward to, kind of getting after this in the second half.
Well, there are a lot of things to be excited about with your club. Most recently, the surprising emergence of home run derby champion Pete Alonso. So what do you think has been most impressive about Pete's performance this season, and what kind of attitude does he bring to the clubhouse?
He's impressive to watch. That guy can hit a baseball a long way. So anytime he's up at the plate, you're just hoping one goes way out of the ballpark. Some of these home runs he's hit have been very impressive, and I was fortunate enough to be at the home run derby and watch him win that. But, the guy comes in every day and prepares. His goal is to help this team win a baseball game. And as a rookie, he's done a good job just, preparing in the right ways and going about his business the right way.
Okay, so for the majority of your career, you rocked the long flowing hair. However, after the 2017 season, you decided to cut it. So what was the reason that you decided to part ways with the look? And since it's not you anymore, who has the best hair in the league now?
I was really getting tired of it, to be honest with you. I always wore a hat, on the field, off the field. It was just a way to keep it out of my face. So I think I just got tired of it being in my face all the time. And now, who has the best hair in the league? That's tough. There's a lot of guys rocking long hair, but we actually just played the Giants, and I was thinking Crawford's had his for a long time, so maybe I'll give it to him.
Okay, fair enough. Well, you grew up in Florida as a Braves fan. So what's it like competing against your childhood team and now division rival?
Yeah, it's fun. That's a young, good group of players. So anytime we go against them, that's going to be a tough game. So, I grew up a Braves fan, but, love the Mets now. And, my goal whenever we play the Braves is to win a baseball game. But like I said, that's a good baseball team, very competitive, and those games are always a blast to be a part of.
Well, you played college ball at Stetson University, but originally it wasn't on the mound. You started as a shortstop before being used as a pitcher later in your career. So what led to that switch?
Summer before my junior year, I went to a summer ball league, and they told me at the summer ball league I was going to pitch, and I wasn't real sure what was going on, and I didn't end up playing there too long, which who knows what would have happened if I would have. But I ended up saying, hey, I need to hit and take ground balls and get ready for, the baseball season, the college season to start. And then in the fall, they told me I was going to come off shortstop and close, and we weren't winning a whole lot of baseball games. So they called me in somewhere about halfway through the season and said, hey, we're going to have you start Friday nights. And second start happened to be against Chris Sale. Everybody knew he was going in the first round. And, I went out there. I think we ended up losing the game, but it was a close game. And that's when I kind of started getting noticed as a pitcher. And once that happened, I was like, all right, maybe there's a chance this pitching thing works out.
Yeah, got to play to your strengths there. Well, but it's apparent that you can still hit, even going yard this season for the second time in your career. Do you miss the opportunities to play the field or get into the batter's box as frequently as you did playing in college?
Yeah, I do miss it. Playing every day, that was fun. But now, I've always said if I got to choose, I would probably choose to pitch. That it's your day that day. You prepare 4 days in between to get ready for that one day, and you're kind of in charge out there on the mound. So I really do enjoy pitching now.
Well, since we're DraftKings, we have to give you at least one fantasy sports question. So who do you think is the fantasy MVP of the 2019 season?
MVP. I would have to say the way Yelich is going, Bellinger, those guys got to be up there. I think it's a pretty close race probably between those two.
All righty, our NFL panel is back. DK Live, Steve Buchanan, Jeff Ulrich, and Reed Fowler. And now the NFL team we're taking a look at would be the 49ers. So like we've said a million times, a panel of DK Live writers and analysts went through every NFL team to decide who they think will be the booms and busts of the 2019 NFL season. So should we focus on San Francisco?
Yes, absolutely. This is the cherry on top of the NFC West. We are wrapping up the division. MVP, most valuable player, talking fantasy-wise here, George Kittle. Steven, do you agree with this? Or, maybe your ex-Patriots quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo?
No. It's definitely going to be Kittle on this one. Look, he's coming off a season where he had the most receiving yards by a tight end, which he did last year. And he did that with a backup and then the backup's backup. So for him to accomplish that was an impressive feat in itself here. And you would think he would be scoring, you'd think he'd be scoring more on this offense, but he only ended up with 5 touchdowns last season. We can start to kind of get a few more scores here. He's going to be an absolute force at this position. When you're drafting here, Travis Kelce, one of the top options here, but I think Kittle's right out there with them. He still had 19 targets in the red zone last year. We'd like to see him get a couple more scores there, but, with Jimmy G back in the mix, you'd think that number is going to start to go up a little bit more. But, yeah, I think it's a no doubt that he's going to be the MVP of this team here. There really isn't anybody else that stands out, at least to my opinion, that would be be a candidate here.
Reed, if the panel's going with George Kittle here, they've got to be pretty confident he's going to score more than 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, you got to be confident, too, that those yards are going to keep up. And I think San Francisco saw a ton of injuries that kind of what happened with another team that's in the Bay Area with Oakland. The receivers all went down or they just were non-existent. And so the tight end position stepped up. You see an athletic tight end like George Kittle. And Steve mentioned it. He only had 5 touchdowns. And the other thing that he only had, which scares me a little bit, not too much, is the 7 red zone targets. And with a tight end, you need those touchdowns. Albeit when you look at this tier now, or these tight ends, it's Kelce at the very top alone. And then you have Ertz and Kittle. And then after that, it's really, you're throwing up a ton of guesses with O.J. Howard, Evan Ingram on a bad offense, and then Hunter Henry, who we haven't seen all past year. So I think you have to go with Kittle right in this spot. I think you have to draft him in that third round, which is where he's going, because when you can win that position over and over again every week, that's going to win you a lot of games, and that's what it is week over week winning in fantasy football, not season long. So give me George Kittle on this spot too.
Yeah, and Jeff, Jimmy G returning, so you got to think his efficiency should rise. He had 25% of his 2018 targets. They were uncatchable.
Yeah, I mean, what George Kittle did last year with considering the quarterbacks he had is pretty impressive, and a lot of it was after the catch. I mean, he just put up insane after the catch numbers, especially for a tight end, something you didn't even see like Rob Gronkowski in his heyday even do. So I'd like to make an argument here that maybe someone else on the 49ers could rise up and challenge him. There's one player we'll talk about later who might have a chance, but it's got to be Kittle. And I know that the 49ers drafted a bunch of wide receivers, and they do have some talent outside, but I just don't see anyone necessarily popping up to be like a dominant force necessarily like Kittle was, at least to the extent that Kittle was last year. He's such a mismatch after the catch against the linebackers when he gets the ball in his hand. Like you said, Emerson, getting an upgrade at quarterback, I just don't see any downside here. I think his touchdown rate could even go up with Jimmy G at quarterback. So even if the yards go down a little bit, I still think he's looking at the same type of upside this year.
I will say, though, like, if he has to really increase, if he gets double team or bracketed like we saw with Gronk, because when we think about it in terms of the offensive, manpower that the 49ers have, he's the number one receiver. Again, Dante Pettis and some of these other guys have some upside, but he's number one. He's got to have a Gronk-style type, game to beat these double teams, and it, remains to be seen if he can do that.
Reed, speaking of Dante Pettis, the panel predicting he's going to be the LVP or
least valuable player.
Least valuable player. That's
overvalued.
What do you think?
This is gross.
Yeah, you're against
terrible.
this. Terrible take.
Terrible take. This is probably a Julian Edlow type analysis.
I was thinking the same thing.
He was a guy who did this. No, he is not going to be the LVP. He should be more of the breakout candidate, but, he was that last year. Towards the end of the season, weeks 12 to 15, he was wide receiver number 8. He ran 80% of the pass plays. The 49ers have clearly wanted to feature this guy last year, and reports, albeit it's preseason, coach talk and football talk is always positive, he really has become now this wide receiver one. It's going to be Marquise Goodwin for me, and that I say that with trepidation because I do think he is a nice late round flyer because he's got Olympic style speed, and this guy was going extremely high in drafts last season, 4th or 5th round, because of that Shanahan-style offense for that receiver to see a ton of production. Now with Jimmy Garoppolo coming back, you just look at all these other receivers that they have and they brought in. We talked about George Kittle, the running backs that we'll talk about in a little bit, Jeff's boy. I think it's going to be Marquise because he's still someone that people are drafting, and I just don't see in terms of a lot of the manpower that they have at that position.
Yeah, Steve, Pettis was able to put up some good numbers with Nick Mullins. So with Jimmy G out there, going to be even better? I mean, is this guy the LVP?
This panel's the worst.
Okay.
It's so bad.
Julian is the worst.
It's Julian Edelman.
They're so bad. If we're friends, off camera, whatever. Sorry, you're terrible. I mean, Pettis is going to be the wide receiver one. I don't see how you don't think that. And he battled a number of injuries last season, but when he was still on the field, he still managed to kept 60% of his targets, 467 yards, had the same number of touchdowns as George Kittle last year with 5. Honestly, I think the LVP, cover your ears, I think it's going to be Tevin Coleman.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
Jeff.
I know. Hey, hot take city. Let's
Jeff,
go.
It's okay, man.
I mean, I don't care about Jeff. There he goes. Good. I did everyone a favor. I mean, look, I get that he's going to be reunited with Kyle Shanahan, but people are drafting him as he's the starter, and that's really, I don't think that's a guarantee at this point. Jerick McKinnon's still in the mix. Matt Breeder's still in the mix. I mean, it's a messy situation in that backfield right now. I get the appeal with Tevin Coleman, but at this point, until we know that he's officially the RB1 and is going to stay in that role, I think he's being overvalued right now.
Beautiful.
Okay,
Buchanan.
Jeff.
That was absolutely beautiful.
Jeff, I know that you want to address the Tevin Coleman controversy that just happened, but please just stay on track and let me know if Dante Pettis is the LVP.
I hate to agree with Reed and Steve here, but I guess I got to do it here because I do agree. I mean, Dante Pettis is clearly the best option at wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. He's the wide receiver that profiles the most to be like a potential number one receiver. And I think, as we saw last year towards the end of this season, Reed alluded to those 3 or 4 games where he's working with like Nick Mullins and he was putting up good numbers. He's a very talented receiver. He's 6'1". He's got like open field punt returner skills. I think he's going to have a good year. The only worry is that the 49ers went a little wild drafting guys like Deebo Samuel, Jalen Hurd. I think Jalen Hurd is interesting, but I think they're going to use him more as a gadget play, a little bit of end arounds and bubble screens and a little bit over the middle. Doesn't worry me that much for Dante Pettis. I think Dante Pettis is going to have a good year, push for like, top end wide receiver 2 or bottom end wide receiver 1 status. Not that worried about it. So is there some bust potential here? Yeah, because it's a little bit of a crowded wide receiver slot, but I still think Pettis is the cream of the crop for the 49ers.
All right, Jeff, we got to start with you for the breakout player, which the panel believes will be Tevin Coleman. So this was your slate-approved pick from week 1 to week 16 last year when he was with Atlanta. So your thoughts on the possibility of him being able to break out? Steve made a good point. I mean, connecting with Shanahan again, they're both on the same page.
Steve's out to lunch, like usual. Look, Matt, let's just break it down simple. Jerick McKinnon's coming back from an ACL injury, not even on the field yet. We're not even sure his week 1 status. Matt Breida's going to get hurt. He's going to get hurt. So, and quite frankly, Matt Breida is better suited to a backup role. I think Kyle Shanahan knows that. Tevin Coleman is the guy who has come out here consistently year in, year out. He averaged 4.8 yards per carry. He was one of the leaders in yards after contact last year. He's put up 3 to 5 receiving touchdowns in like a 40% role with the Atlanta Falcons every season he's been in the league. This is the most profiled running back 1 that the 49ers have. Kyle Shanahan knows it. He's got him on a good contract. I think he's going to come in here and see 60% of the snaps. And I think McKinnon and Breida, who's ever healthy, is going to work behind him. And it's going to be that simple because Tevin Coleman is the only one who's proven he can take a workload, work as an every down back in the 49ers backfield. I absolutely think he's still being undervalued. I don't know where Steve thinks he's going, but I don't think he's going high enough yet.
All right, Steven, I'm going to let you take it away. You said he was going to be the LVP, so feel free to chime in on that and who actually you think the breakout player will be for San Francisco.
I think it's Dante Pettis. I think people aren't giving him enough credit as being the guy who's going to be the wide receiver 1 here. I totally get the appeal with George Kittle and why you want to be looking towards him, but I think Pettis is going to be the wide receiver 1. I would probably take Jeff's analysis a little more seriously if he wasn't like dating Tevin Coleman often. That's kind of what it feels like every single time we get on this subject. So I need like a logical, non-tunnel vision on Coleman here because that's what I get every time we talk about it with Jeff here. Like, I get it. Coleman's a good player and he's in a good opportunity here, but I just still think the 49ers running back situation is too much of a mess. So don't forget him. Nope. No, I'm not on it.
Reed, bring us home, my friend.
To Jeff's point, we saw Tevin Coleman in a bad offense, Sarkisian-led offense in Atlanta, and so you kind of have to divorce that of what his potential was and is going to be with Shanahan. So I do agree with Jeff that he's in a better position with Shanahan and the 49ers, but I am not on Tevin Coleman as a breakout player because he's not a breakout player. People are drafting him as he's an RB1. So value alone, I'm gonna side with Steve here on where you're going to draft Tevin Coleman. If we saw San Francisco, and this is so much to Shanahan's credit, Raheem Mostert, Matt Breida, those guys had quality starts. And so is it necessarily a position that's extremely successful, or is it the player? And Tevin Coleman has had chances as RB1 in Atlanta with Shanahan and then with Sarkisian, and it just hasn't panned out. Devontae Freeman was hurt his entire, the entire time Tevin Coleman was there. He was always hurt. And he had chances to become that RB1, and he just wasn't.
All to Ito Smith, though, Reed.
Yeah, well, why should Ito Smith even be a name if Tevin Coleman was an RB1? And that's my point, is that they gave red zone touches to Ito Smith and not Tevin Coleman. I mean, enough has to be said about that. And so now, where this guy is being drafted, I don't see it. I'm agree with Steve there. He has the potential to be an RB1, but for me, that breakout players, I like to be Pettis, or even looking at Deebo Samuel. I mean, if Goodwin and these guys don't pan out, and this rookie, they went, like you said, they went crazy for receivers. They obviously see something there. I think Shanahan, this is going to be weird to say, is on a short leash. I think he has to start winning because he's been there for a while, and he has to start winning. And so they're going to be chucking the ball around, and that's not necessarily in the backfield. So I'm going to leave more receiver with Steve here. Although Tevin Coleman, we'll see him in terms of the NFL season that Jeff's going to say he's a slate-approved pick again.
Yep. Week 1, I'm ready for it.
Alrighty, guys, we got to transition straight into put up your bukes right now. So let's welcome back in Greg Ehrenberg.
Yeah.
Steve Buchanan already here. So you know the drill, guys. Steve picks his top plays of the night along with DK point projections. Greg, you're going to do your best to tell him what
I guess battle him?
Yeah. So Steve, your first buke.
Yeah, so it's going to be Merle Kelly here for 23 DK fantasy points. He's facing the Orioles tonight. And look, he's pitched so much better at Chase Field than he has on the road here, and that's where he's going to be tonight. Just a 274 WOBA, 3.65 xFIP at home. And look, since the beginning of June, he's been absolutely fantastic. 249 WOBA in that span, 4.17 xFIP, and that includes his road and home numbers. The Orioles are just such a bad team on the road. I mean, they have one of the lowest isolated powers, one of the lowest WOBAs in the league when they go on the road here. So I feel like Kelly's not getting talked about much tonight, and I think that's actually a mistake, really, to pair him with one of the high-priced pitchers tonight. So Kelly's definitely one of my plays here tonight.
Okay, Greg, what's your take on Kelly and 23 DK fantasy points?
Yeah, so I kind of have mixed feelings here. First off, it's hard for me to see much upside in Kelly just because he really strikes out very many hitters. He only strikes out 7 hitters per 9. He has 6 or less strikeouts in 12 of his 14 starts this year. Now, with that said, the Orioles stink. The Orioles they're like magic for DFS. Every time you stack against them, offenses, they usually score a ton of fantasy points. You roster pitchers against them, they score a ton of fantasy points. Because the Orioles stink. They should be relegated to the independent league or something. So I look at Kelly's numbers this year, and I kind of think that he screams more high floor play than high ceiling. But I can't really totally disagree with it just because the Orioles are so terrible.
Okay.
Steven, your second buke. Maybe we can spark up a little more controversy.
Yeah, we will, because this is such a great pick. We're going to go with Scott Kingery for 14 DK fantasy points. I think there's just this misconception here that Matt Boyd has been good as of late, because if you look at his game log, he really has not. If it wasn't for the amount of strikeouts that he's been getting as of late, his game log would look so much different than it has right now. He's allowed at least 4 runs or more in 6 straight starts, and now faces a Phillies team that hits well against lefties. Kingery on the road in these type of matchups, a 400 over, 243 isolated power, batting leadoff tonight. The Phillies as a whole are just way too cheap. I think this is a really sneaky spot for the Phillies to take advantage of Boyd. Maybe actually kind of crack him for once, because like I said, he's just been getting hammered as of late.
All right, well, this game is going to be starting in a rain delay. Yeah. I don't know if that changes anything here.
I don't care.
Okay, I figured you'd say that. Let's see if Greg cares about this projection of 14 DK fantasy points.
All right, so here's the issue. I did write an article earlier, and I made a case for rostering some Phillies players because of those struggles of Matt Boyd, so I can't really totally go against it here. If I have to say one thing to poo-poo on a little bit, Steve says that he likes Kingery so much, but he wasn't even in his original list. He only got thrown in because of an injury replacement. But I can't really disagree too much, just because we look at Boyd, he's really being highly rated in fantasy circles, and the Phillies are really cheap tonight, and it's because Boyd's been a great fantasy asset. He's striking out a lot of hitters, but like Steve said, he's giving up a ton of runs also, so it's hard to think the Phillies aren't going to score runs here. I'd probably be off him a little bit just because of weather concerns at this point. There's 15 games on the slate. I'd rather target a spot where there's no weather concern at all.
All right, guys, it is slate-approved pick time. Who is your lock on tonight's MLB slate, Steven?
Yeah, it's going to be Ronald Acuna. I think they're going to absolutely smash Danny Duffy tonight. He's in a terrible spot against a good hitting Braves team.
All right, who are you going with here, Greg?
So I'm going to go with Steven Strasburg. At Coors Field, the Rockies have kind of an okay offense just because Coors Field is so ridiculous for offense. But on the road, they're last in baseball with a 68 WRC+. There's this narrative that Steven Strasburg can't pitch in hot weather and that he's bad during the summer. But in July, he has a 1.45 ERA, so I don't necessarily think that's the case because nobody's scoring against him so far in the summer. So Strasburg, really plus matchup at home. He's striking out over 10 hitters per 9 this year. I think that he's the high-priced guy to pay up for.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that's going to be a show.
That is the show.
You're not here for the rest of the week.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm going to go visit my parents because they're falling apart down in Florida.
Okay, well, I will be back tomorrow. We're going to talk to Twins infielder Jonathan Scope. So that'll be at 6 o'clock. You can watch on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all the normal places. Also, the DK Live app, which if you don't have, just download it.
Who's with you tomorrow? Are you with Glasheen?
I don't know.
Maybe you're solo. You've been doing.
It's going to be me and Adam Kaufman.
Never mind.
Tomorrow at 6 p.m. Be sure to tune in.
Good luck, everyone.
Bye, guys.